And when we continuously get waste and we sift through it and we are left with all of these clothes that are probably also made out of polyester, which is also plastic, quote unquote, that we don't know how to recycle and it doesn't degenerate, so we don't know how to manage that waste.
So the river is really suffering and the fishes are normal. When we used to be kids, we used to swim inside, but at the moment you can't even dare tell your kid to swim inside.
What if it's not too late to turn the time? What if it's not too late to try?
Ever wondered what happens to the clothes you give to charity? Some, as you'd hope, are reused or recycled, but others might be becoming someone else's waste problem. My name is Natalie Carney, and in this 5th Trash or Treasure podcast, we'll be traveling to Kenya and investigating how our fast fashion throwaway culture is having serious environmental consequences there. We'll also be speaking to industry experts about what we can do to tackle our global textile trash mountain and meet some of the innovators who are encouraging us to rethink our attitudes to clothing. Now, take a deep breath. Around the world, an estimated 92 million tons of textile waste is created by the fashion industry each year. To put that into perspective, that means the equivalent of 1 truck full of clothes being dumped in landfill or burnt every single second. If this current trend continues, that means by 2030, we're expected to be discarding a whopping 134 million tons of textiles a year.
We need to reduce the amount of clothing that we as a global society are producing because it is quite frankly completely unsustainable.
Alan Wheeler is director of the UK's Textile Recycling Association, which is the trade body representing commercial businesses and charities which work in the sector. He says that the fashion industry is the world's 2nd largest polluter, producing 1.2 billion tons of greenhouse gases.
Some estimates put the fashion industry as being responsible for 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's more than aviation and maritime put together. And you hear an awful lot of people saying we shouldn't be flying around so much. I don't hear people saying you shouldn't be buying so much clothing, and yet it has more of an impact on the climate change issues than flying does. So that is obviously a really serious concern.
And there's also the issue of microplastic pollution, which Sir David Attenborough brought to the world's attention in Blue Planet 2. Microplastics are very small pieces of plastic that never biodegrade, and they're found in synthetic fibers like polyester, nylon, and acrylic. It's estimated that 35% of all microplastics in the ocean come from washing these synthetic textiles, and they are being ingested by all kinds of marine wildlife. Believe it or not, just washing clothes releases a staggering 500,000 tons of microfibers into the ocean each year, the equivalent of 50 billion plastic bottles. Last year, scientists at the University of Manchester discovered the highest levels of microplastics ever recorded on the seafloor at the bottom of the Mediterranean, near Italy. They found up to 1.9 million plastic pieces per square meter. Another big issue with the garment industry is the chemical waste discarded during manufacturing. For example, Indonesia produces a lot of clothes. On the banks of the Citarum River, there are over 1,000 fabric factories, and they are releasing toxic chemicals such as mercury, cadmium, and arsenic into the river, the same water that locals bathe and wash their clothes in. Yuyan Ismawati is from the Nexus 3 Foundation, an environmental health NGO in West Java, and she is very concerned by what is happening in her country.
Here in Indonesia, the clothing industry is causing a lot of environmental damage and health problems. Over 1,000 textile factories dump tons of toxic waste into the Citarum River in West Java, making it one of the most polluted rivers in the world. Locals say that the textile dyes are even changing the color of the river every day. The pollution in the Citarum River from textile industries have been recognized since the 80s. When I was still a student, I went there to several hotspots in Citarum River to see the colored wastewater discharged into the river from several pipes. I used to work as a water engineer, so it was shocking to see the river that provides 80% of the water supply for Jakarta is so polluted, not only by wastewater discharged by the textile industries, but also solid waste from human waste and domestic activities. My concern is the toxic chemicals from textile industry have not been appropriately monitored.
So, how did it all get so bad? Under the UN Sustainable Development Goals, many countries have committed to ensuring sustainable consumption and production. But in the UK, for example, people are buying more clothes than ever. The average consumer buys 60% more clothes than they did 15 years ago. Remember the days when we actually had fashion seasons? Now, a lot of the major retailers offer us something different through their social media channels and advertising each week, fueling our fashion addiction. I read a tweet from one of the big brands recently, and it said everything in our roundup of best new in pieces this week costs less than £25. Great for your image, especially if you want to be seen in a new outfit on social media every time you post a photo. But what kind of environmental and human cost is this having? Some fashion firms are doing their best to address our clothing waste issue by introducing recycling schemes where customers are offered a voucher or a discount in return for dropping off unwanted garments. But is this enough? Shouldn't we ultimately all be buying less and making our clothes last longer? Some experts in the fashion industry say we need to educate consumers.
I'm Carrie Summers, and I'm the founder and the Global Operations Director of Fashion Revolution. Fashion Revolution is now the world's largest fashion activism movement. You have to empower people, you have to make them realise that they have the power and the ability to create change. And we have a mantra at Fashion Revolution: be curious, find out, and do something about it. For instance, we have a really fantastic course that we run with Future Learner called Fashion's Future and the Sustainable Development Goals. It's had over 30,000 learners now, and that's what we want people to do. We want them to engage and to learn.
Carrie says the whole fashion industry needs to be united if we are really going to reduce our mountain of clothing.
We have to change the conversations, we have to change the narrative, and we have to change the culture on which it thrives, really. And we've just got to sort of, I think, refashion that way in which people think about and engage with their clothing so that we can change those mindsets and create those new narratives, and we can all play a part in bringing about that change. I mean, influencers certainly have a role to play, but brands, advertisers, photographers, I mean, there's so many different people who can all play a part in starting to change that.
Carrie says it doesn't matter where you buy your clothes, it's how well you look after them and their longevity that matters.
We don't want to say to people, well, look, just because you can only afford to shop here, that we're going to victimise you. We have to say, wherever you shop, you can choose to keep those clothes, you can keep them in your wardrobe for longer, you can wash them and care for them more responsibly, and you can love those clothes, whatever the price point is. And we know that a lot of brands who are selling clothes at a higher price point are making them on exactly the same production lines with the same environmental impact, and that difference in price is mostly markup. So, I think we have to start to understand and unpick some of these complexities in a much deeper way.
So how does the UK fare compared to Germany, where I'm from, and the rest of Europe when it comes to collecting used clothes? Alan Wheeler again.
Well, we actually collect more clothing per head of population than any other country in Europe, but we shouldn't pat ourselves too much on the back, because whilst we might be collecting a little bit more than Germany, what we do a lot better than them is consume fast fashion. So we're buying a lot more new clothing and we're discarding it a lot more quickly. We're more wasteful.
80% of the pre-loved clothing the UK public donates is done through textile banks and charity shops. It is then sorted into reusable and recyclable items. It's a complicated process, as Alan explains.
Now, typically in the UK, you're looking at maybe the clothing being sorted into 100, perhaps 200 reuse or recycling grades. And if it's reusable, they'll sort it by garment type and by market type. So the main markets for used clothing are Eastern Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and also Pakistan as well. And recycling, they'll sort it out into different fibre types, different colours and so on and so forth. So they'll separate the cottons, the nylons, the polyesters, the wools, that kind of thing. And then they're sold on to a mechanical recycling process, it might involve cutting or pulling the materials and then using them in the manufacture of new products that way.
Oxfam has been recycling and reusing clothes since 1974. At the charity's Waste Saver facility in Yorkshire, they handle around 12,000 tons of textiles every year. The site's manager, Lorraine Needham-Reid, has been working at the recycling plant for over 10 years.
My name's Lorraine Needham-Reid and I'm the site manager at Oxfam Waste Saver. We're in a 90,000 square foot warehouse, so quite a big warehouse, about 10 miles away from Leeds. We're actually based in Batley, which is, believe it or not, the hub of the mattress industry. So we're surrounded by people that we can sell our own wearable garments to.
Lorraine told me a little bit more about what they do.
All the unwanted garments from all the Oxfam shops across the country come here, be they unwanted because they haven't sold or be they unwanted because they're not saleable. They come here and then we sort them. Those that are still saleable will often go back out into the shops if they're a particular kind of price range, or if they're vintage or something like that, or they'll go to festivals, or they'll go online. Some stock goes overseas as saleable garments into the Ghanaian market, and we send some stuff to make the mattress, the bit between your springs and your bum in mattress bedding.
Lorraine says she has witnessed a change in consumer attitudes.
Over the years, I've seen two kind of strange shifts. One is the rise of fast fashion, which has meant that people will wear something once then throw it away. But then you get ones that actually it's really trendy to wear second-hand clothing, and they're really keen about sustainability, about the environment. So you kind of almost get these two camps that at the moment ne'er the twain shall meet.
Currently, very few clothes that are sent to be recycled are actually transformed into new clothing, a process known as material-to-material recycling. When it comes to recycling woolen products, Italy is definitely leading the way, as my colleague Marco Colombo found out.
I've traveled to Prato, which is about 25 kilometers from Florence in northern Italy at the foot of the Monte Retaia Mountains. I'm here to find out how tons and tons of clothes that have been thrown away, jackets, skirts, coats and shirts, are being transformed into new garments here. It's a real rags to riches story. Believe it or not, this small industrial district now processes 15% of all discarded clothes globally. Although Prato has been producing textiles for more than 800 years, the people here only started recycling clothes, particularly woolen ones, from the mid-19th century. When the cost of real wool skyrocketed after the First World War, local manufacturers started to use the so-called shoddy wool from old clothing to make new clothes. It kept costs down. Silvia Gambi is an Italian fashion journalist.
Here in Prato we have the wool without the sheep. The reason of the recycling wool here in Prato is this, because in Prato industrial companies need to have wool, but they haven't sheep. And so in some period where the cost of the raw material was very high and was very difficult to receive these materials, they invent this method.
There are literally hundreds of companies in the different warehouses around me, and each specializes in a different part of the process: sorting, spinning, weaving, and designing new clothes. In fact, the local textile industry employs around 40,000 people. So, it's not just good news for the environment, but good news for the local economy too. Let's go and meet some of the people who have made Prato the European capital of clothes recycling.
Here we are unloading what people throw away as clothes.
Where is this coming from? From Italy?
This is coming from Italy, and every week we unload the 2 trucks from Germany.
Fabio Marseo is the CEO of Gemar & Figli in Prato.
We are in this business since 100 years, so I am the 3rd generation. And yeah, we work in second-hand clothes and recycling. We sort the original goods that arrive from Italy and from Germany, and we make a selection of what is good for reuse and what is good for recycling. More or less, we use the 40% as a recycling, and just the 3% come out as trash, so what we burn.
This is the first stage of the clothes recycling journey. Around 8 tons of clothes arrive here at this warehouse every day.
The people here are specialized in selection of second-hand. So, for example, in one sack you can find children clothes, blouses, trousers, bags. So the first step is to separate all these categories. So after it became easier to make a quality selection.
So, after being sorted, reusable garments are sent to Africa, countries like Kenya, Senegal and Ghana, and also Eastern Europe. Then, the clothing that can be recycled is sent down the road for the next stage of the process. Fortunately, only a very small percentage of it ends up in landfill. I've just arrived at the Comistra factory, where the Tesi family has been manufacturing clothing for 100 years, investing a lot of money in innovation and technology. Here, all the material is ripped into shreds, and the zips and buttons are removed, ready for the strips of rag to be turned into thread.
Ecco, questa è la fase finale.
It's a complicated and noisy process, as you can hear. I'm standing next to the carbonizing machine, where all the impurities are eliminated from the wool, before it is put into what looks like a giant washing machine. The wool is turned into fluffy fibers. Comistra owner Fabrizio Tesi is very proud of his company and its environmental credentials, turning clothing waste into a resource. Fabrizio says more needs to be done.
L'industria tessile oggi è la seconda industria più inquinante del
The
pianeta.
textile industry is the second most polluting in the world. 20% of all water and 10% of emission in the atmosphere, as much as air and naval transportation combined. We need to improve an industrial circular economy if we want to fulfill and protect the need of a new generation. This process of recycling creates 27 times more jobs compared to sending the second half clothing to a landfill or incinerator.
Time now to see what happens to the recycled wool in the last stage of the process. Claudio Calabresi is the managing director of Nuova Fides in Prato. Tell us more about what your company does, Claudio.
What we essentially do is to transform the fiber first into yarn, and then the yarn is crossed into weaving. So we have warp and weft which are going into weaving like this, and we create the fabric. Weaving, the looms that you see here, they are engineered to get these nice combinations together and to get the nice fabric, which in the end we are going to sell through all over the world.
It's an impressive sight seeing all the looms at work. 70% of the material is made using recycled yarn, and there is lots of demand for it. In Prato alone, there are around 7,000 textile and fashion companies, with an export market of 3 billion euros. So Claudio has now brought me to the sample department, where they're selecting fabrics for the new season. It looks like blues and greys are in this year.
What we are really very good in Italy is to do the nice designs and nice color combinations. We are masters in fashions because we have a very good skill in doing this job here.
What I've seen here in Prato today has been truly amazing. Sadly, globally less than 1% of textiles are produced in this way. It seems that the rest of the world has been slow to cotton on to the recycling revolution. If Europe is to achieve its target of net zero emissions by 2050, transforming more rags into high fashion will be vital. I'll leave the last word to Fabrizio Tesi from Comistra.
Industriale circolare può aiutare.
A circular economy doesn't only help humans but also the planet. Every year that goes by, the planet can offer less resources. It is vital to be able to develop a circular economy that can give resources back, limiting the exploitation of existing ones by saving water, electricity, and carbon emissions.
Well, it sounds as though the rest of the world needs to take a leaf out of Italy's book when it comes to recycling wool if we want to create a more sustainable fashion world. Over in the UK again, there are also some exciting developments. There is a company called Worn Again Technologies, and it's doing its best to eradicate textile waste using advanced recycling technology. The team there is trying to solve the challenging issue of converting polyester and polycotton blended textiles and PET and plastic at their end of use back into circular raw materials. Last year, Worn Again Technologies secured £7 million in investment, so they're definitely a company to look out for in the next few years. As we heard earlier in the podcast, some donated clothing is exported overseas. It's estimated that around 70% of all donated items in Europe are sent for resale in Africa in local markets. But what about the poor quality and damaged items? Are we just dumping the problem in another country's backyard? CGTN's Kenya correspondent Danielle Erepmoy reports from Nairobi.
Kenya imports more than 140,000 tons of second-hand clothes or mitumba a year. Now, these items come from all around the world. Some of the good quality clothes get sold and reused, but the poor quality items often end up in overflowing landfill sites like Dandora, Africa's biggest. Here they are often burnt or end up in the river. I have come to Kibera, one of Nairobi's most deprived areas, to see firsthand what is happening. This shanty town is thought to be the largest in sub-Saharan Africa. It's home to around 1 million people, the majority of whom live below the poverty line, and it's where some of the second-hand clothing waste is ending up.
So the clothes, you find like a bed sheet. So you know a bed sheet, when someone has dumped the bed sheet in the river, it will hold on much waste, on much soil, yeah? So you find that 90% of waste in the river are clothes and fabrics.
Being disposed. Take a trip down Nairobi River. I promise there's nothing to smile about.
Gisore Nyabuti is the chairman of Slum Going Green and Clean here in Kibera.
My name is Gisore Nyabuti, chairman of Slum Going Green and Clean. Born and raised here in the last 2 decades. So we have seen the slum when it was green, and now when the slum is in a menace of waste. People are becoming irresponsible. They think someone who will come to pick it up, or they wait for the rain to come and wash it to the river. So the river is really, really suffering, and the fishes are normal. When we used to be kids, we used to swim inside, but at the moment you can't even dare tell your kid to swim inside.
Gisore and other members of Slum Going Green and Clean run education campaigns and river cleanups and encourage locals to think about the environmental consequences of old clothes being discarded in the river. But many people are too worried about where the next meal is coming from to be able to make environmental issues a priority.
We have to protect our environment. The future generations will judge by our actions depend on us.
We really need to teach our community the importance of rivers, of waste, the importance of rain, yeah, and the importance of how we can correlate with the environment so that we can serve the environment and not that the environment can serve us. Yeah.
What if we didn't pollute the rivers and we still had fresh water flowing everywhere in every river? Yeah, guys, I'm asking what if, what if, what if, what if? What if it's not too late to turn the time? What if it's not too late to try?
Another very active member of Slum Going Green and Clean is Larry Dwayne. As well as being an environmental crusader, Larry uses his music to raise awareness in his local community. He wants to stop clothes and other trash ending up in the river.
You know, when it's like a battlefield and the only weapon you have is this music to protect yourself. And for me, I feel like music can and will make a difference in terms of just educating the community. I am inspired by all these things that are not right in the ground, in the community, like poor garbage disposal and dumping in the river. I just take these things that are happening on the ground and I use my creativity as an artist to write them in such a way that they can be understanding to any person, young, old. Anyone in the community will be able to understand me.
Everything is all good. Now me Larry Dwayne, I will play my part clean. Easy river to heal this cause. Kawangari matai, I will die for this.
At first, I was skeptical. I was like, you know, it's not my problem. You know, a lot of us get to think like that. You feel like it's not your problem, but it's the environment, and it's the one thing that we have in common as humans. I would love to, you know, urge each and every youth in Kibra to come together and clean the river.
With around 50% of Nairobi's population living below the poverty line and surviving on around $1 a day, buying second-hand clothing or mitumba can be the only affordable option. The problem is that along with good quality items, other countries are sending clothing trash here as well, clothing that is too damaged to be worn. I caught up with a few traders at the toy market, an open-air market located on the outskirts of Kibera. They depend on selling second-hand clothes for their livelihood. Without mitumba, they feel as though they don't have a future.
These clothes are cheap, and when they stop them from being imported, people won't be having job opportunities.
I couldn't think of going to the shops and getting new clothes because sometimes you'll just find the quality is not as the best as second-hand clothes, you know.
Second-hand clothes here in Kenya, they are good quality, they are cheaper, and also you can get self-employed through the second-hand clothes. And you can start with any capital amount. Yeah.
Wagura Kamwana is a retailer and the creative director of a fabric shop called the Textile Loft in Nairobi. She has some sympathy with the mitumba sellers, as in the 1990s, her mom used to sell second-hand clothes, but she believes the only way forward for the local economy and for the planet is to invest in the local manufacturing industry and build more textile mills.
A lot of the second-hand clothes coming here are cast-offs, basically. You know, you might find a nice pair of jeans and a shirt, but half of the other stuff, it's clothes that we can't even wear. what happens? It ends up in the landfill. We don't have recycling capacity, so it ends up getting tossed all over the place. And so when the whole cycle changes, it's actually for the better. We have to start somewhere, and some people will be affected. But in the long run, I think it's going to be the better for Kenya. We'll grow our manufacturing, we'll create more jobs, and these jobs are local jobs. So at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want?
But there are some signs of hope. In Kenya, like elsewhere in the world, an increasing number of organizations and businesses are trying to come up with innovative, sustainable clothing solutions. Now, one of them is Africa Collect Textiles, which reuses and recycles clothing and footwear and wants to promote circularity. Alex Musembi is one of the co-founders of the social enterprise.
Yeah, people are becoming more aware with the fashion industry. People are now excited, people now are becoming empowered, and we need to do a lot of social media education so that the community can be able to understand when we mean recycling and the importance of reusing.
Alex and his colleagues currently put containers in shopping centers, churches, and other places in Nairobi and Mombasa. He says it's important that people can donate the clothes anonymously because there is a cultural stigma about giving clothes to friends and family members in Kenya.
The reason why we are collecting textile anonymously and in an organized and structural manner is because Africans, we are known to believe a lot in voodoo and witchcraft. If you pass your blouse or your garment to your friend, and some things, for example, they're not going right to her or to him. For example, it's not getting a job or a new job, or if she's becoming sick, then people tend to believe it's because of the textile passed to them. So then people decide to not even to give their textile to other people. And that's also explains the reason why people have a lot of textile in their wardrobe and they need to declutter.
The team at Africa Collect Textiles send reusable items of clothing to orphanages, old people's homes, or to other vulnerable groups. The rest of the donations are recycled at their 2 Nairobi-based warehouses. So woolen and acrylic items are transformed into blankets, and other fabrics are cut into pieces and then made into face masks, shoes, and carpets. Nothing is wasted, even shoe soles are made into mats. Alex says they try to be as creative as they can with the resources around them. They are currently offering an All My Denim fashion range and producing personalized shoes and rugs for customers. As I've seen for myself today, the clothing issue here in Kenya is incredibly complex for a variety of reasons. So should Kenya follow Rwanda's lead and ban the import of second-hand clothes? This is a question I would like to have put to the government, but unfortunately, no minister was available for comment. Despite all his concerns, Job Wanjohi from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers doesn't believe a ban is the answer.
I can tell you that at the moment it is impractical to think that you can ban. But you can do it gradually by ensuring that there are various measures that are being put by the government together with the private sector. So simply ban, that is not likely to work because it's likely even to cause some economic and even security crisis in the country because of the numbers that are employed there.
Like Job Wanjohi, Alex Musembi doesn't think that banning second-hand clothing immediately is the solution either. He believes it would have dire economic consequences and that the focus needs to be on circularity and more organizations like Africa Collects Textiles, recycling and reusing clothes. Alex thinks it's going to be years before Kenya and the rest of the world finds its way out of this clothing labyrinth.
There's more dumping. The world has become a dumping environment, this planet Earth, so it's not safe for anyone.
So this dumping will kill us more than the Al-Shabaab. So this discussion, even the next 20 years, will still go on, because then people have to be enlightened that the global population is growing. We have new generation. So people are becoming more conscious, and this conversation, I think, is not an end.
Let's finish with one final plea for environmental crusader and singer Larry Dwayne.
What I will say to all my fellow, friends, human beings, we are all together on this earth. We are one big family, and as I said, what we have in common is Mother Earth. And I would just love to encourage each and every youth around the world to play their part in terms of conservation, and I will just urge them to not tire, and just encourage each and everyone to be at the forefront to fight for ecological justice.
We really need to change this now. I say we really need to change this now.
So, how do we change all this? Apart from changing consumer attitudes, it's through innovation. I want you to pause this podcast for a moment and have a quick peek inside your own wardrobe. Are there any outfits that you've outgrown or perhaps even never worn? A recent study by sociologist and author Sophie Woodward from the University of Manchester found that 12% of the clothes in our wardrobes are quote-unquote inactive, meaning we don't wear them very often or have never worn them, like ever. Okay, hands up, I confess that I myself have a couple of items like this. Well, this app might help us. It's the digital equivalent of a swishing or clothes swapping party.
Hi, I'm Aisling Byrne. I'm the founder of New. It's an app to swap pre-loved fashion. Our mission is to recirculate the clothes that already exist in our communities and breathe life into the clothes that sit in our wardrobes. So we're all about recirculating the fashion that already exists and finding items that are new to you in the most efficient way.
So tell me about the event which made you reevaluate your attitude to fashion and ultimately inspire the New app, Aisling.
I spent some time in India in 2013, and it was the same year as the Rana Plaza disaster, which was the collapse of a garment factory in Dhaka in Bangladesh. And so for me, as someone who absolutely loved fashion, and I guess I was buying clothes I didn't need for nights out every single week, I had a realization of the real social and environmental cost behind the fast fashion industry. And I wanted a way to be more sustainable in my fashion habits, but a way that was also affordable and accessible for me.
I think we all remember the collapse of the Rana Plaza factory building in Bangladesh back in 2013, which killed over 1,000 workers, the worst industrial incident to ever hit the garment industry. I can just imagine, Aisling, the impact it must have had on you. It was definitely a wake-up call for us all. So up to that point, you had purchased fast fashion, and then that stopped overnight. So what happened when you got home to Ireland after your travels? Did it make you see all your outfits in a different light?
I had a lot of clothes that sat in my wardrobe. And so for me, it was about giving those clothes new life, as much as it was important for me to find clothes that felt new to me and that I could wear and enjoy. And so the idea, I guess, at the end of the day was very simple. It was just replicating that idea of sharing with friends and family and bringing that to a wider community using technology. I guess also understanding that the clothes that are in our wardrobe, just because we feel that we're done with them, they're not at the end of their life. They have a really long life to live. We want to be wearing them way more than just once, way more than just 7 times, hopefully more than 30 times. And if we can't do that as an individual, we can do that as a collective. And for me, it was in some way solving a personal problem, which was I really, really like fashion, and I didn't want to say goodbye to it because I had found out how destructive it is.
Developing an idea into an app and then a fully fledged business was a long journey, and Aisling admits that she was very naive. To gauge whether her idea had wings, she started off very simply by asking students at her old university in Dublin for photos of dresses they no longer wanted. After seeing the pictures online, the students could then swap garments, and Aisling would calculate the carbon waste and water impact of each of the swaps. Shortly after this, Aisling was then selected for the Bethnal Green Ventures Tech for Good program and moved to London. She says that the space to make an impact in the UK was far more mature than in Ireland at the time. And now, 3 years on, the new app has evolved and really taken off.
So there's two parts of the platform, and this was helped along by the pandemic, as we're all familiar with. So originally New started as a borrowing platform. You would go on the platform, you would upload an item that you generally one-time wears, occasion wear pieces, dresses you would wear to a wedding or a ball. There's high-value items that get left in your wardrobe for a long time, and you upload that to the platform, that gets approved, and you can then request to borrow short-term from another member of the community. What we've built since then is a swapping part of the platform, and that's permanently giving away or receiving items. So you upload a piece to the platform that you're ready to say goodbye to. You're given a silver token for high street items and gold for mid-market or designer items. And once that item is approved, you have your token, and you can use that token to request another piece on the platform.
Ironically, the lockdown has been great news for business. Over the last 6 months, there has been a 2,000% growth in the numbers of swaps that are taking place on the new app. Aisling and her team also recently held a very successful swap shop evening with Fashion Revolution a few weeks ago, and they measured the environmental impact of that event.
So through the swaps that happened on the platform for our Fashion Revolution swap, we saved 655 kilograms of waste, over 9,000 kilograms of CO2 offset, and 904,000 litres of water offset.
Aisling says with the new app, you don't need to have 50 dresses in your wardrobe. You can have one dress and 50 friends through this online community of like-minded people, and this is much better for the planet. And if you're struggling to get a fast fashion addiction under control, help is on hand. Earlier this week, I received an invitation for a Wardrobe Crisis Academy, a 6-week online course which promises to teach you how to find sustainable clothing and look gorgeous. Calling all parents and grandparents, here's a whiz-bang idea that might save you a bob or two whilst also saving the planet. We all know that bringing up a child can be an expensive business. Take the UK, for example. On average, first-time parents splash out around £1,000 on baby gear in the first year alone. If you have the time, you can scour the internet and pick up a pre-loved bargain on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. But now, a London-based fashion tech startup has come up with an incredible sustainable alternative.
As it expands in two directions. So as you pull the leg out, it actually becomes wider as it becomes longer. Whereas typically a material, as you pull it out, it becomes thinner if you think of lycra or a rubber band.
The team at Petit Pli, which means little pleat in English, have designed clothes that grow with young children so they don't grow out of them. Yes, you did hear that right.
I am Ryan Mario Yassine, the founder of Petit Pli. Our first solution is clothes that grow with children. And this is an invention I came up with using my background as an aeronautical engineer that specialized in deployable structures for satellites.
Like Aisling Byrne, Ryan drew a lot of inspiration from a personal experience.
At the time, I was tackling waste within the fashion industry, and I realized that extending the life and use of garments is the best way we can reach our carbon, water and waste emission targets. Around the same time, my nephew was born, Figo, and I had sent him a top to Denmark, but by the time it arrived, he had already outgrown it. And that was the seed that essentially made me realize that I could balance ethical and sustainable solutions with a desirable and commercially viable outcome. I would just have to focus on a very niche user group, which was children, and design for their rapidly growing bodies.
There are so many really cool aspects to Petit Pli's expandable clothing. Ryan was influenced by the ancient Japanese art of origami in the initial design phase, and recycled bottles are used in the manufacturing process. And when child number 2 comes along, the clothes can be altered to fit a sibling or siblings.
But the biggest and most exciting thing, I think, is inspiring the next generation. So being able to have that direct line of conversation with the next generation and say things can be designed differently, and to help them aspire to be engineers and astronauts and to think out of the box, I think is the thing that myself and the team are the most proud of. Even our packaging turns into a toy, so it's a zero waste concept that again isn't adding waste to the world, but is showing people that actually we can be so resourceful if we just think about everything that we're putting out into the world.
It will come as no great surprise that Ryan has won numerous awards for his revolutionary clothing brand, but he says his greatest satisfaction has come from seeing his nephews and other kids' reaction to his clothing and knowing that he could help the fashion industry to reduce its carbon footprint.
I think the most inspirational element of this design is seeing children see the magic within Petit Pli. So when they first see the garment expand open, they do believe that it's magic. You know, this growing garment that they've never seen anything like before.
And if you fancy donning an origami-inspired outfit, you'll be pleased to know that Ryan and his team at Petit Pli are hoping to come up with an adult range, and they're attempting to design a print that will cover up stains. The technological magic continues. And on that uplifting note, we've come to the end of our podcast. From what we have heard today, I think you'll agree that we all need a lot of magic to tackle our enormous global clothing trash mountain. While recycling, reusing, upcycling, and using sustainable fabrics are all part of the solution, we really need to change consumer behavior. And that means you, me, all of us appreciating the true value of our clothes. Carrie Summers from Fashion Revolution again.
I think it really starts with a shift in our relationships. We just can't carry on, dumping our waste on lands and oceans and countries that we've already culturally depleted. We can't carry on ignoring this inequality. So we have to look at new ways for the industry to work, both for the health of people all over the world, for our own health and well-being, and for the health of our earth and oceans.
If we have clean rivers, then to corner clean lakes. When we have clean lakes, then we have more fish, then to corner more food, feeding up.